Hello, everyone. I wanted to talk about my experiences with a game that I recently played called Fable 3. Fable 3 is it's an interesting game. Uh, I have experience playing the first Fable game, not the second Fable game, uh, but and I actually really enjoyed the first Fable game very much. The first Fable game is basically a game where uh, you basically take a boy who grows up into be a hero, and so eventually the boy has to decide whether or not he is a good hero or an evil hero, and the actions that you take within the story decide what kind of person you are, and it basically determines the outcome of the story, which is very interesting. I mean, of course, there is a main storyline. You have to follow the storyline, but you can make decisions within the storyline that that do alter what kind of personality you have, and it does it does basically. It basically determines how the people see you. It determines how the economy runs and things like that. So I was very fascinated by the first Fable game. I didn't play the second Fable game because, well, I only just recently got an Xbox 360, so I never had the opportunity to play the second Fable game. But I heard that the second Fable game is probably the most favorited Fable game out there, so I'll probably pick that one up next when I get the opportunity to. But when I was at the game store, I saw Fable 3 and I wanted to give it a shot. And here are my thoughts on it. Well, Fable 3 takes place in a how do I say it? It's like a it's like an industrial age, whereas the first Fable game takes place in like a uh, like a medieval age, right? Where there's guilds and knights. Where the third Fable game takes place in the industrial revolution, right? And so basically, you play as a prince or a princess. I actually chose to be a princess, which actually one feature that I added to my princess character was I put facial hair onto my princess. So I don't know. I kind of decided to make my princess kind of non-binary in that respect. I kind of rejected the binary trend. So, and then actually, what was really interesting was that people were kind of confused as to whether or not I was even a boy or a girl to begin with. I thought that was pretty interesting. Um, but uh, with that being said, um, within the third Fable game, you basically play as a prince or a princess, and so you're basically opposed to your 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 brother Mogan, who is the king, and he is a tyrant. And and by the way, I am going to spoil the plot for anyone who doesn't want to be spoiled with the plot. I'm going to spoil the plot. So so you're opposed to your brother Logan, who is a tyrant, and so you basically go out into the world. And so you have your comrades. You have Walter, who is your comrade, who basically raised you to become a hero. A swordsman, and an excellent shoot with a pistol. And so, and I gotta say, by the way, like the combat in this game is fucking amazing. Like one thing I really enjoyed, I had such a fucking kick out of, was the fucking pistol. Like one thing I gotta say, like it felt so fucking good to just shoot your fucking enemies like in the fucking head. Like it felt so good, and like the thing that I actually focused most of my energy on was actually raising my stats to become the best shoot possible. So that was fun. But anyway, as you progress through the story, you go along and you you learn about the world around you and the people that Logan oppressed, right? And you begin to start making these promises as the people, as the oppressed people begin to trust you, because of course you're a princess, right? You benefit from the system, but you do all these favors that eventually show um, that you mean to help the oppressed people, and so basically once you begin to gain their trust, you begin to make all these promises, like ending poverty and building an academy within the city or the town or the village, and things like that, or actually building a protective base around the indigenous neighborhood. And by the way, there was a lot of people of color representation in this actual game. Granted, there were people of color in the first Fable game, but there was a lot of indigenous representation in this game. I've noticed that. Not necessarily within the fictional universe, of course, but they basically wanted to represent multiple different cultures being represented, and how they are oppressed within a monarchical system. So over time, you begin to make these promises for them, and then once you gain their trust, you then along the way. I'm gonna go on a tangent here. Along the way, you learn about this thing called darkness, right? And this happens when you're on a ship and you're going to this off city, like the offshore island called Aurora, and basically you're basically somebody crashes your ship, and then basically you basically wash up on shore, and you enter this cave, right? And so basically darkness, it's just basically this abstract thing called darkness. It's hard to describe, but basically it's this character, this demonizing character that can basically summon that can summon shadow clones of himself to the hordes, and they basically attack you, and it's very very haunting. And your comrade Walter is basically the one who is most affected by this. He even goes blind as a result of this, and which I really begin to sympathize with Walter, because I want to help Walter. One of the actual choices that you have to make is to choose whether or not you leave Walter behind, or you actually carry Walter through the desert. And the desert is 3 or 4 miles across, and so I actually had to make that decision, and I chose to carry Walter across the desert. Although Walter could not make it, he couldn't make it. Godspeed to him, but he survived, at least at that point. But moving on from that point, he survived, and somebody picked him up, and we made it through Aurora and things like that. But the point is that this sets the plot for later. There is a threat called darkness, and basically I'm talking about this thing called darkness for a reason, right? Once you essentially have this thing, once you basically have all of your comrades together, you basically go and you overthrow the kingdom, and it's kind of anticlimactic. I was expecting more cinematics there. I was expecting more gameplay when it came to the overthrow of the kingdom, but no. All you do is just basically you go through Bowerstone, right, which is the front of the castle, and you basically kill a few guards, and then you basically see this cutscene where they basically kick down a door, and then like they remove the king, and that's it. And then then they have this scene where now you're the queen, right? You are now the ruler of the of the of the of the kingdom, right? So that's the second half of the game. You're now the ruler of the kingdom. Now I'm an anarchist. I don't want to rule anyone, but I mean I didn't really have a choice, right? The game is set on this principle here, right? And so it's, that you have to be the ruler. Now, this is where things get really interesting, right? And this is where I have some conflicting opinions about the game. Like, granted, let me tell you something. I had a lot of fun playing this game, but politically speaking, I have some very conflicting opinions about this game. Alright? Let me tell you about them. At this point where you join, like where you become the king or the queen, there's a scene where you basically like there's a trial, and you decide whether or not to execute Logan, the former king, or not. And so Logan brings out this testimony, and he refers to the darkness that you previously saw before. And Walter, your comrade, confirms that yes, you were there, you saw it, you crashed up on the ship with him, you had to fight off the darkness. What Logan is saying is not false. He's not speaking gibberish. It's actually true. There is this thing called the darkness. And, it is a very real threat, and apparently it's going to attack the kingdom. And so, you have to make this decision, right? The first decision you have to make is whether or not to execute Logan on the moral ground that he has exploited his kingdom because of the threat that was the darkness, right? He has made these exploitative decisions because of the darkness, right? And so my first decision was to execute him anyway, right? Because, no one should have to live in starvation. No one should have to, literally, be deprived of education. No one should have to not have an opportunity to grow up to be able to succeed in life. And that's basically what Logan was depriving the people of, right? Logan, the former king. And so, eventually Logan got executed. So the second decision you had to make, it was that, I think it was your servant or something like that. Basically, your servant also deals with public relations and things like that. But basically, your servant basically took you to the room that was the Treasury, and it shows you how much gold you actually have, right? It's not that much gold. It's like there is like quite a bit of gold. If a regular person would say, "Wow, that's a lot of gold." That is quite a lot of gold. I could probably live comfortably off of that gold probably for the rest of my life. But it's not a lot to say that is a fortune, right? So basically, the secretary basically says, well, you have to make this decision here, whether or not to basically fund the military to fight off the darkness, or you can fund all of these programs that will basically get people out of poverty. So and I think actually it's basically based on a tax policy that you have to do. So So it was another tough decision because in a year, you have to decide whether or not to defend your kingdom within a year, and be a tyrant like Logan was, or you have to decide to basically fund all of these programs that will get your kingdom out of poverty, and it will help the people. And then my decision was to help the people. So, the treasury literally evaporated. Like there was no gold after that. And in fact, we were in debt after that. So, and I mean, that was expected, right? And so at this point, I kind of realized something, right? At this point, I kind of realized that I think what this game is going to do is probably push an agenda on me, but I don't know what that agenda is. And I'm just going to see where this goes. I'm going to continue making the decisions that I want to make, and we'll see what happens, right? I'm not going to get mad about it, but I just want to see what the agenda is, and then we'll see what happens. Because clearly, like, you don't have total freedom here, right? Like, you can make these decisions and make an impact on society. Like, for example, build that base for the indigenous population. Build educational facilities in poor neighborhoods. Build recycling centers and things like that. You can do all these things, or you can basically tax the poor or tax the fuck out of the poor and fund the military and things like that. You can do all these things and basically you would not be in debt. And I've even read some reviews on the internet saying that even making those decisions wouldn't even matter, because actually you need to be investing in gold from the beginning of the game in order to actually have a sufficient military. So I mean, I'm a little suspect as to even whether or not I would even have a proper military. At the end of the game, I'm a little suspect. If I would have a proper military at the end of the game had I been taxing the poor to begin with. So the day came where, the darkness finally struck. I have made all of the decisions that I wanted to make. I basically ended poverty. I have helped the people of Albion. I have basically done everything I wanted to do. And I have a very positive reception of within the kingdom, right? And so, now granted, let me tell you something. In Fable 1, I would not have done this, right? I would have no moral obligation to do this. Every time I played the first Fable game, and I played the first Fable game multiple times, I would explicitly get the evil ending, right? Because it was much more fun, right? Because you actually had the ability to go out and kill cops. You actually have the ability to kill civilians. You actually have the ability to like become Satan in the first Fable, right? But in this game, you don't really have that. You can't kill cops. You can't kill innocent civilians. You can't become Satan. So in this game, you have to make moral decisions that impact average, regular people. And so I was literally basically acting based on how I would want the society to become, right? And I worked so hard to improve society that the economy basically collapsed, right? We were so in debt that I had to make a decision whether to bail out the economy or to just let the economy collapse. And I chose to let the economy collapse. I don't know if that was a good decision or not. I don't think it really made a difference within the game, to be honest with you, because I was still able to make decisions based on what the people wanted, and it didn't restrict my decisions either way. So I still was able to give the people what they wanted anyway. After I did that, so whatever. I think it was just my secretary just bitching at me at that point. So the day came where the darkness was beginning to attack, and of course I did not have a military, and basically there were casualties already. People were dying on the street, and I had to go out and fight them myself with my comrades. Walter and some of my other comrades, and of course I had some guards that were fighting with me. Because I'm the ruler of the kingdom, I have the authority over the guards. So, basically, I went out, I fought the darkness single-handedly with my comrades, and there was a scene. It actually kind of made me tear up a little bit, where the darkness itself, the leader of the darkness, possessed Walter. And basically, there's a B right there. It basically possessed Walter, and I had to kill Walter. I tried really hard not to kill Walter. I actually spent about a good 5 minutes trying to avoid Walter at all costs. But the game just wouldn't let me. So basically, I just had to kill Walter. And I just had to put the bullet in his head, and yeah, Walter passed away, but eventually the darkness passed away too. And, the ultimate decision was, after we erected a statue in Walter's honor, the game basically told me that, yes, you stopped the darkness, but your kingdom is basically annihilated. Your kingdom is basically gone. Most of the people are gone. There's a few remaining survivors within the kingdom. But ultimately, your kingdom is gone. And the people who live within your kingdom will remember you as the ruler who let your kingdom die. So I spent a little bit of time roaming the kingdom a little bit. I went into Bowerstone, and I wanted to basically see what the kingdom looked like, right? Because before, as I played the game, it was certain areas had a lot of people in them, but now it's literally empty. The game is so fucking empty. There was a store that originally had people in it that is completely empty, and I was able to steal merchandise in it. The game warned me that if I stole something it would be theft, but I was there's no one in here. If I steal something, no one's gonna stop me from doing it. So I just stole everything that was in the store. And yeah, I think that's basically the decisions that I made basically benefited the country in the short term, but the thing here's my issue. Here's my verdict with the game, right? Let's talk about the politics of the game, right? I've spent 24 hours basically explaining the plot. I'm sorry, 24 minutes explaining the plot. Let's talk about my opinions about the politics of the game itself. Fable 3 is basically pushing this idea of how do I say it? It's you have to basically fear foreign terror, right? You have to fear the foreign enemy. It's pushing this idea that you have to fear the foreign enemy, and so therefore you have to beef up the military and step on the people that are your own citizens in order to have the best possible outcome. That's basically what Fable 3 is advocating for here. And it makes sense, actually, because if you look into today's society, when you look at the war on terror, you have so many you have people who are basically you have politicians who are funneling money into the war on terror, and they're basically doing it under the pretense that if we don't gut these social programs and beef up our military, then we're all going to die. And it's such a reactionary and right-wing way of looking at it that it doesn't really leave room for actually building a proper society. Instead, it basically wants you to buy into the idea that you either build a proper military or a super military to fight off the foreign enemy, or you die. And it basically doesn't want you to help the people. And it kind of has a narrative on capitalism in a way, because capitalism basically necessitates profit over the people, right? I was thinking, throughout the story, so there's this threat that is darkness, right? Why not get rid of the profit motive, right? Or the necessity to tax the people, and just basically advocate, that we need to fight off the darkness that is coming within a year, or else we're going to die, and then recruit people based on camaraderie, because clearly I was actually gaining followers, right? And I was actually gaining some legitimacy within the game. So instead of actually stepping on people, why not just speak to the people and say, listen, we have an enemy coming, I need your help. I just don't understand why that wasn't an option. That was something I was just thinking about throughout my playthrough of the game. It just doesn't make sense. It just kind of basically pushes this narrative that we need to necessitate capitalism, and the fear of white genocide. If we let the foreigners in, then our people will die out. Which is what the Great Replacement is, right? That's what the Great Replacement is if the foreigner comes in, then our people will die out, right? Although in Fable 3, it's more extreme, but and I think the Great Replacement has to do with the decreasing in birth rates, whereas Fable 3 is literally about the annihilation of your people. But so maybe it's not the same thing. I guess maybe comparing it to the Great Replacement, it's a bit of a stretch. So I don't know, but so anyway, I don't know. Those were my thoughts on Fable 3. I wanted to share basically my emotions and my thoughts on playing this game. Now, how do I feel about Fable 3 in terms of quality? It's not the best game out there. I don't think that Fable 3 is better than Fable 1. I think Fable 1 is way better than Fable 3. I can definitely tell that Fable 3, graphically speaking, is better than Fable 1. I can tell that, the production value is better than Fable 1. But I think, in terms of content, and in terms of, in terms of the content itself, in terms of actually, engaging, with the story, and also the amount of stuff you can do in Fable 1 is much greater than Fable 3. In fact, actually, you have more spells in Fable 1. You had more weapons in Fable 1. You had more options in Fable 1, whereas Fable 3 is very streamlined. So, it's kind of Fable 3 is kind of pushing this narrative, and I don't know. I'm not very comfortable with that. Whereas Fable 1, you can kind of do whatever you want. If you want to be evil, you can be evil. If you want to be a justified hero, you can be a justified hero, And that's what I liked about Fable 1, Although every time I have played Fable 1, I became a fucking evil prick that basically killed everyone, and, everyone feared me. But yeah, those are my thoughts, and that's it. Share your comments in the comment section below. Here are my Patreons. If you support what I do, go on Patreon, because every dollar helps me. They help me greatly, and if you donate $1, you can have your name here. If you donate more, you can actually decide on what a future video I cover will talk about. Anyway, take care, folks.